Hi, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Matthew. And welcome back to the style training portion of your video. Today we're going to be talking about Irish red ales. So Irish red ales are a traditional style of Western European beer. However, it's not necessarily traditional for Ireland. Irish red ales are actually a type of advancement from the English Pale Ale, from the traditional English Pale Ale. Traditionally, they have a little bit less of a hopping rate in the brewing process, and also use a little bit of more darker and roasted malts. They're typically fairly sessionable beers. The BJCP, or Beer Judge Certification Program, which is kind of the governing body for styles in the United States, puts their ABV range typically from 3.8 to 5%. However, the beer we're doing today actually clicks in at 5.6%. Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
That's right. This is Highlands Gaelic Ale. Like Matthew said, it's 5.6%, which is a little bit high for the BJCP standards, but it's a guideline anyway, so it's just fine where it is. This comes from Asheville, North Carolina. Highland is one of, if not the first brewery in Asheville. Now, if you don't know right now, Asheville is really exploding on the craft beer scene, especially on the East Coast. You've got Oscar Blues, that's just opened up an East Coast brewery right outside of Asheville, a little town called Brevard. It's about 25 miles southeast. And then also near the Asheville airport, Sierra Nevada is now brewing test batches, so they should be online soon. So Sierra Nevada is going out of Asheville. And then New Belgium Brewing is opening up another brewery. They have one in Colorado. They're opening up another one in Asheville, and that one's really cool. It's right on the French Broad River. The site that they chose to build on, this is New Belgium, is actually a gray site, so it's taken a little bit of time to clean up the pollution that was on the site, but the river is going to be better than it ever was before because of these cool craft breweries coming into town. But Highland, we'll get back to Highland, these guys were the first kids on the block. This brewery is owned by a gentleman, a very, very nice gentleman named Oscar Wong, who is an engineer who left his engineering job in 1994 to open up Highland. Let's go ahead and crack this open. That's all right. I got you. All right, you got it. All right. So we're going to use a standard pint glass for the pour. And as always, we're going to do a two-step pour. Actually, the brewery that Highland's in right now used to be a movie studio. So they've just expanded. They've got plenty of space. They were doing some. They also rented some of the space out to a liquor company. They were doing some distillation on premises. So if you're ever in the Asheville area and you want to go up and visit a bunch of good breweries, not just Highland, but a bunch of really good breweries. Wicked Weed's another good one out there. Hit Highland up. You won't regret it. Look at this beer.
Yeah, it's got some really nice red, amber, orange, copper hues to it. Nice clarity too.
Yeah.
Really, really nice clarity. Slightly dull. And there's a little bit of residual sediment in it, which is just fine. It's just a little bit of suspended yeast, which is fine. It's not completely polished, but pretty well filtered.
Yeah, it gives you a very nice kind of warm feeling when you look at this beer that I didn't expect.
Yeah, and there's that color kind of mildly translates over into the head too, where a lot of beers you'll find the head is more of a stark white or a bone white, eggshell, and this has got some nice color to it. It's almost a little bit of like maybe like a brown sugar. It's very nice.
Let's smell it. Well, I'm getting a lot of that. You just said brown sugar. I am getting a lot of that brown sugar on the nose. Yeah, almost more than I am getting the roastiness of the malts. Really, really sugar forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely got, you know, like the style guidelines say, a little bit less hopping. This is certainly not a hoppy beer. It's definitely malt forward, which is honestly a little bit surprising to me because typically an American brewer translating a classic European style tends to have a little bit higher of a hopping rate than what's traditional for the style. But this one, at least from the aromas, seems to be pretty true to style.
Yeah, and maybe that might have to do because Highland was on the scene a little bit earlier than a lot of the craft brewers, so maybe they've resisted that, hop everything urge since this recipe was probably nailed down before the hops really, really got into
Absolutely,
the
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, let's give her a taste.
All right. What a smooth beer.
Yeah, very malt forward. You get a lot of those brown sugar, slightly roasted notes. I get the roast a little bit more here in the body than in the aroma. Yeah, but it's definitely sweet. And then, I mean, actually now, after I've swallowed a few seconds later, now I'm kind of getting some of that dryness, which is indicative of the style as well. A little bit of a drying and mildly bitter quality on the back ends. I think that's really where. Now this uses actually. Is it Willamette hops in this, which I think is really kind of coming through right in the finish. There's not much up front. You get hit with that nice sweetness of the malt, and then it segues into the
what are some characteristics of the Willamette hop? Is that an earthy hop?
It's more of it's more of a pine-based hop. Willamette Valley is actually in it's actually where they grow the best Pinot Noir in the world. It's actually in Oregon. It's Oregon and the Pacific Northwest in general is where a lot of American style hops are brewed. But the Willamette hop specifically will give off a lot of pine and then some bitter citrus. It's not really bright and juicy like your major C hops, your Cascade or Centennial. It's a little bit more earth-based. It tends to have more in common with a classic European style hop, which is probably why the brewmaster decided to make that decision for this beer.
Yeah, one thing that I can really that stands out to me is probably comes from the water. There's kind of a hard mineralistic quality, especially on the hang, almost an astringent, not in a bad way, but almost an astringency on the hang that I feel comes from the water quality.
Sure, that minerality kind of comes through a little bit. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, but it's clean, it's crisp. I mean, it's definitely got some body to it, you know. It's not. I wouldn't describe it as a light beer, although I certainly wouldn't describe it as a heavy beer either. It's definitely got some balance, a nice clean, somewhat refreshing because of the dryness to it. It's really a well brewed beer, well composed.
Yeah, and having said that, I think that should give you guys a pretty good insight onto what kind of guests you would suggest this kind of beer to. It's still kind of on the beginning end of the spectrum. It's not overly hoppy. It's not overly malty. It is a really nice balanced beer. And Irish Reds generally are like that. But even this one at a little bit of a higher ABV is certainly probably a beginner's craft beer. Would you agree with that?
I do, and I think a lot of people that will come through the Brass Tap have at least some sort of familiarity with this style of beer. There are a few commercial examples. Something like Killian's Irish Red is a commercial example of this style. Smithwick's, which is brewed by the same brewers of Guinness, is also another commercial example that's got some popularity and some name recognition. But this is really one of the best, and like we mentioned, one of the more older and traditional American styles, or American versions rather, of the Irish style. Really a very well composed beer, and we'll carry this in most of our Brass Taps. And it always comes in at a pretty moderate price point as well, so it makes it an easy sell.
I've seen it both in bottle at Brass Taps and on draft quite a bit as well. So availability shouldn't be a problem, at least for the stores that are in the Southeast.
No, absolutely. And it's always a great beer if somebody just wants something that's nice, easygoing, but also has a lot of character to it.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.